Welcome to Frequency. I'm Jenni Fields.
And I'm Chuck Gose. Frequency is your go-to for real talk about comms, culture, and employee experience beyond the buzzwords and straight to what matters. To kick things off this week, Jenni, I don't know how you feel about this word, but recently someone asked me, they're like, hey, how's the pod going? And I'm like, the what?
Oh!
And they're like, the pod. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, frequency. I'm like, the podcast? They were like, yeah, how's the pod? I'm like, it's not a pod. It's a podcast. What is the obsession with this? Is this like where like blog started out as weblog and then people shortened it to blog? And are we now trying to do the same? I don't like that word.
I mean, I have used this word to refer to,
Jenni.
but I think in a text where I couldn't be bothered to write podcast, but it's not something that I would frequent. So I don't feel like I would say, oh, it's a great pod this week. Oh, no, that gives me the ick. No, I'm not doing it.
I know. I kind of threw up in my mouth a little bit when they said it. I was like, it just feels weird.
Fair.
So that being said, I wanted to remind everyone that at Unite next month, Unile's event, we are doing a live podcast episode of Frequency for attendees. Would love to see many of you join us there in Nashville, which, Jenni, I think that's your first trip to Nashville.
It is. I'm so excited. I'm still watching the series, which I'm very late to the party on, I know, because it was out many years ago. But I am very excited.
You should be. It's a great city. We're going to have a lot of fun. And then to bring it down a notch, Jenni.
Okay.
There's every now and then there are things in this world that remind me you're getting older. I'm
getting older or you're getting older?
Me, personally. I'm saying that back personally to me. And I have to put my glasses on for this because I'm actually reading this out of a newspaper.
Okay.
Because we still get the newspaper. And I saw the headlines was that Spotify crowned Songs of the Summer for 2025. And Jenni, I know one artist of these five.
What are the five?
Got Ordinary by Alex Warren, Shake It to the Max, the remix, not the original, the remix, Shake It to the Max by, man, I'm probably going to butcher. This is making me sound old too. Molly, Silent Addy, Skill Bang, and Shensia.
You've never sounded so old in your life.
Love Me Not by Raven Lene. Back to Friends by Somber. There's no E in Somber. It's just SOMBR because you can't have vowels. Too many vowels. And then Man Child by Sabrina Carpenter. That is the only one. So was I even here this summer?
So
was I even alive then?
Have you listened to them though? Because I feel like I just
picked the paper up.
So I need you to send me that photograph so I can listen to them because I'm very much someone that would know a song but wouldn't know who it was by or what it was called. And I'm trying to give us some saving grace here. Like I bet if we listen to them, we'll know them, and that will be our test.
I would probably be like, "Oh, I heard 10 seconds of that on TikTok."
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, you would because you do love a bit of TikTok.
And I wonder how much TikTok now influences.
Yeah.
The songs that are selected are the songs of the summer, so to speak. So we have to say goodbye to Brat by Charlie XCX. That was last summer. Sabrina Carpenter was on that list. Chappell Roan was on. So they're old. They're gone.
Done.
And we've got to focus on Somber and Silent Addy. Apparently, those are the songs of the summer. So, with that, Jenni, what have you got tuned up for us this week?
So I had lots of reading time, which we've talked about on this podcast, not pod, before, where I was having my shoulder stuff done. And I was reading the July and August Harvard Business Review magazine. So a few of my articles today are from that. One about DEI and one about joy. So I really want to talk about those. I've also been checking out some articles about productivity and digital noise based on some recent research that's been done in the UK. So we've got that to talk about. And then we'll finish today with a look at the latest insights from the IC Index in the UK, which is a report from the Institute of Internal Comms and Ipsos Karian and Box. I'm excited about this because in the episode last week, we talked about the Corn Ferry study, which was the US US workforce, and this is the UK workforce. So I don't know how linked the surveys are, but I thought it was nice balance that we've got a UK one this time. So let's kick off with the Harvard Business Review article about diversity and inclusion. And the reason I want to talk about this is the headline was Achieve DEI Goals Without DEI Programs. And I thought the article was great. It had really practical things in it about what you can be doing in your organization to improve DEI without having programs. And in the current political challenges around DEI, things still need to improve, even if they can't be labeled as DEI. So the article states that high performance management is simple. If you can create a work environment in which all employees are valued, supported, and motivated in ways that allow them to do their best, you'll get higher engagement from them and better business outcomes. Diversity isn't the goal, but it's a natural byproduct. The article goes on to share a few different case studies, and that's what I want to touch on here, because I think this is useful for anyone in HR, communications, leadership, any of those areas of organization to think about what we could do to improve diversity and inclusion if we can't have specifically named programs. So the first one that comes up is referral programs. And it says that referral programs work because people of colour in frontline jobs rarely feel empowered to refer family members and friends unless they're actually asked to do so. And a formal referral program provides that ask, which I thought was a really nice, straightforward thing people could do. Then the second one is doing skills development. So they talk about creating an academy, and the example in the article is Walmart, who included a module on career paths. So it linked to Walmart's commitment of internal promotions, and they also had an additional incentive where graduates got a $1 an hour raise, and it invited them to enroll on an assistant manager course. Now, this is a long game, right? So over 8 years, the increase in people of colour in management positions went from 31% to 43%, and female executives rose from 32% to 39%. So it shows you some of that data in there as well. The next one was mentoring programs. So formal mentoring programs boost representation of women and people of colour in management. This is across different industries. So in highly skilled industries like computing, electronics, the mentoring programs increase the share of managers who are white, black, Hispanic and Asian women, or are black and Asian men, by at least 15% over several years. Interestingly, these industries, these sort of electronics, computing, chemicals, those places, mentoring is the single most effective diversity booster for them, which I thought was staggering. And then the final piece was from Gap, where they talk about flexibility and stability. Now, they made some changes around how they manage shifts in their retail stores. So they introduced an app where people could swap shifts without supervisor approval. And there were other things in there. But the data around giving people a sort of stable week-to-week schedule where it was possible and having that flexibility meant that their numbers increased amazingly. So from 2011 to 2017, the number of store managers who are people of colour rose from 25 to 29%. And from 2017 to 2023, that went from the 29 up to 49%. And then the data on women is similar. So the number of female employees went from 73 to 76% in that 2011 and 17. And then it went, for store managers, went from 68, 69% up to 76% after the scheduling changes. So I read this and just thought, this is so much great information in here of practical stuff to address such a challenge in organisations where we might not be able to call out programs. So for those in HR and operations, if you're advising them, Chuck, and talking to them, which one of these do you think people should focus on first?
I'm pulling my thoughts together on this. Let me give my take first.
Okay.
Referral programs, awesome. Skills development, 100% behind it. Mentoring programs, of course, yes, all kinds of opportunities there. Flexibility, stability, we know people need both. The rest of it, Jenni, I hate everything else about this. I don't like any of it. The fact that you said we can't even say, oh, we've got we've got DEI. We can't call it that. We can't
Mhm.
call it that because there's some weird fear now of us actually focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workplace. Like if you're afraid of any of those three things, leave. If you're afraid of your workforce being diverse or equal or inclusive, come on. Like the fact that we have to come up with like, you can do these things, but you can't call it that thing. How cowardly is that? Like, how cowardly are leaders now? That's what I love about companies like Costco who have said, no, we still have this.
Mm.
It's still called DEI. Yes, that stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We still believe in those things. So, yeah, we're going to use this acronym to describe what we're doing. Companies should be doing these things regardless. What I'd
Mhm.
like to point out, and I think I'm getting this right, is that all of these data points come from the time when company leaders weren't afraid of DEI. There was actually celebrated. So the fact that some of the stats you shared around people of color, I've lost some of the numbers because I've switched screens on it, but like all of those things happened when DEI was a focus. And oh, by the way, there also happen to be referral programs and skills development, mentoring programs, and all those things. I want to get back. Let's talk about the referral program for one. I've gone back to
Mhm.
the screen because I wanted to point this out. Why don't people of color want to refer family? Why don't they feel empowered? That's the issue. Like, you have to ask them to do it. So why do they not feel empowered? That's the type of stuff that DEI gets to. Having a referral program is great. It can sit on the shelf all day long. But if employees don't feel like they can take part in it, then that's the problem. That's the
Mhm.
problem. So all of these things are important in businesses. I just hate the fact that there are now that DEI has been politicized. It's been used as an adjective. It's used as like in a reverse way that somehow it's a negative for a workforce to be diverse, equal, and inclusive. I hate it. I hate everything about it.
So and maybe it's different over here. So I don't see that it's a negative to be diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Definitely not that. But I do think that there are people working in comms and HR that are under pressure to still deliver all of those things, but just not call it that. And I'm not saying that's right either, but the intention is still there. Like, and I'd rather that the intention was still there and the work is being done, even if you can't label it as something that has become politicized for all of the wrong reasons. So I don't think it's meaning that people don't want to do that or don't want to do that work. It's more, how can I do this work within
Mhm.
the parameters that I'm now having to operate in? Like, what can I do in order to continue the work that I'm passionate about and care about, that's the right work and the great work? How can I do that without labeling it that program? And I think that is a reality for many people, rightly or wrongly, but they still want to do the work. I don't think there's anyone
Mhm.
saying, I don't want to do the work. I'm not interested. And this is
Yeah.
just, we'll do this,
Oh,
but it just so happens.
I think it's those parameters that I just don't understand. I don't understand why that's such a threat. I
Yeah.
don't understand that again. We're not going to solve it today.
No,
That's the part I don't
no.
understand, and I also don't like the fact that I think we've sort of lost the narrative on those things. That because it's become this toxic term out there for some people, that now nobody's talking about it. When I think now is actually the time
Yeah.
to talk about it because it's being silenced in other places.
I'd be interested to see what's the latest data on it as well, because when there was the first wave of conversation about this and there was organizations changing their wording on their website and people were removing things, there was lots of talk about what was happening. It was before we started Frequency. But I wonder what's happening now. Like, now that there's been a series of maybe 6 to 8 months, if not longer than that, since then, what are companies doing now? Like, actually, are people picking it up again and still doing it, and it was just a few people that changed it? Like, I don't know. So I might go away and have a look at that, because I think there's that initial change, but then where are we kind of 8 months on? And I don't know the answer to that in terms of that. that
I feel like now,
reality.
like, people are having to have these, like, clandestine meetings at their workplace. Like, you
Like
have
a
to call
secret
it something
handshake.
else. Yeah, call it something else on the calendar, but we know, like, we've got, like, a code breaker in there
Yeah.
that we can figure out what we're all really talking about. It's childish.
Yeah.
It's childish.
I agree with that. I think that is.
And I don't know if people could tell as I'm talking, the higher level of the voice, the more
Yeah.
ranty I get. So I got
Yeah.
pretty high
You did
there
get
on
pretty
that.
high. You did. But I think we do both agree that these are all good things to be doing in organizations,
Agreed.
regardless on that. But we're now going to talk about joy, just to really lift your spirits and how the busiest people find joy. Now, this article was also in the Harvard Business Review, and it shares some research that suggests that to have a satisfying life, you need to regularly feel three things. You need to have achievement, so recognition or a sense of accomplishment, meaningfulness, so a connection to something bigger than yourself, and joy, which is happiness or positive emotion in the moment. It goes on in the article to share that joy is the one aspect people struggle with the most. And it talks about the fact that joy is found most often in leisure time. But the insight in the article is that the activity also needs to be active rather than passive. So things like watching TV, stuff like that would be a passive thing, whereas active would be going out for a walk, something like that. And it's better to do those things with others. You have more joy if you do something active with others. But you also need to make sure that you do different things. So you don't just decide that you have joy by walking with this one friend. You have to mix it up and do things differently in order to maintain your joy levels. Now, I know you might be listening to this and thinking, what's this got to do with work, Jenni? But there have been so many research reports in recent months that we've talked about in articles about loneliness at work or employee well-being or how people feel happiness at work and all of those things. And they always seem to be on the agenda for the people team. So if this is what people need and this is what's part of work, how do we bring that into the workplace? So my question for you, Chuck, is how do you feel about joy as a concept? What do you do for joy? And do you think there is a role in the workplace to help people find it or indeed create it?
I think it's funny to think about joy as a concept, as if it's like, we don't really know if it's real, so we're just going to conceptualize it. I think even using the term finding joy, it's like you're going into your pantry, your cupboard, and being like, oh, is there any
Hello,
joy in here? But as I've thought about it, I think for me, I create it. I don't wait to find it. I go and create it. And so what you and I are doing here with this podcast, Jenni, brings me a tremendous amount of joy. I was missing that. So I didn't just wait to find it somewhere in hopes that it just like looking under the shelves and looking behind things. No, I created that opportunity. And I know that I find a lot of joy in collaboration, building something with someone else. And so when I find that I'm missing that, that's what I go and do. So I think from those activities standpoint, yes, there is a lot of like enjoyment. I was thinking about like, what are the like, enjoyment? Obviously, joy has to be a part of that. Anyone knows me knows we love Vegas. Vegas is built on joy. I love this drives. This would not be some people's cup of tea. I love watching sports in complete silence. I don't.
Okay.
I don't need the banter. I don't need the commentary. I like to watch it and just enjoy what I'm watching. I don't need someone to tell me what I'm watching. But then professionally, it's doing things like this, and it's speaking at events, and it's hanging out with people, and it's being present. That is where I create my joy. What about you, Jenni?
So very similar to you. So I will go and create joy. I also like doing things with other people, and I like doing new things with other people, like going to different events and things. We went to an event in the UK recently called Salon Privé, which is at Blenheim Palace over here.
It looked very fancy on Instagram.
It was so fancy. It was like supercars, hypercars, classic cars all being shown, and you could buy one if you had a spare 70 million. And there were helicopters and yachts, and I was just like, this is another world. But I love that. I love that experience, doing that with my husband and doing something different. And I think when I was reading this article, I am someone that a lot of my friends will often say, like, you've always got that sort of joy and that sort of meaningfulness and achievement. But the joy for me really comes from being an active participant in my own life, and making sure that I'm creating that. And I'm responsible for that. And I suppose I really recognize it. But I do think you have to learn what it is. And it's that activeness for me. If I'm doing something, there is an element of joy. And I do get a huge amount of joy doing this. I love it. I think about our podcast all the time. Like, there's always something in my mind where I'm like, oh, I need to talk about this, or I've read this. And then I message you and annoy you with all the thoughts. But what about the workplace link? Do you think there's a role for the workplace to help people find joy? Or do you think that's just up to individuals?
I think it's an individual level. And this is where I think we have really missed the mark on this cliche when we talk about, like, oh, employee engagement isn't just ping pong and pizza parties, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what? Some people actually do enjoy those.
That would bring joy.
People, and I've literally, if you're somebody that's like, please do not invite me to a pizza party. I don't want any part of it. I don't like pizza. I hate people that like pizza. Like, so then it's like, oh, we can't do that. Well, why not? Why can't you do those things at work? It's not employee engagement. It's enjoying work and enjoying your people and all of those things. So I think we have sort of crapped on some of these things that companies tried to do to, like, have some fun at work. And I remember one company I worked at, there was a ping pong table, like, out in the office that then leaders were criticized for. They're like, well, engagement's not just ping pong, whatever. So then they put it in this closet and shut the door. Well, then one day I was walking by this closet and I thought, what in the hell is happening? And that closet opened up, and it was the people that liked playing ping pong were now stuck in the closet playing ping pong. Oh, I just hate what we've done to when companies try to do nice things, and it's just a nice thing that we're like, well, it's not this. Well, they know that.
Yeah.
So let them have cake and pizza parties and throw a whatever it happens to be. We seem to be like, no, you can't do that. So We've muddied the conversation. Now I'm getting
you've made me. I've gone off on a rant. You've made me think about the essence of this, which is about having a satisfying life, and I think work plays such a big role in that for organisations, and that's what we're seeing in the data about loneliness and meaningfulness and all that stuff. But you're absolutely right in that we've taken the joy out of work, and I think that taking the joy out of work means that people don't have as satisfying a life, because we've stopped that ability for joy because it's not linked to the engagement metric, or it's not that. And actually, if you focused on how do we create more joy at work, because we've got the achievement, we recognize people, we do that, we've got the meaningfulness, they know why they're doing what they're doing, the bit you're missing is joy. So that's my call to arms, I think.
When I think about this too, I promise I'll wrap this up. In our household, we don't think people celebrate enough.
Mm-hmm.
We think you should celebrate all, because there's so many really awful things in this world. You have to recognize that those things are happening, but you can also celebrate the good things. And the phrase in our house is elaborate and unnecessary. There are times in this life when you need to do things that are elaborate and unnecessary. That was actually the name of the cocktail at our wedding celebration. It was called Elaborate and Unnecessary. I wish companies focused more on that. Yeah. Like, celebrate the milestones, celebrate the little things. Like, those things really do matter. They don't have to be massive expenditures, but just acknowledging them and celebrating them and thanking them and showing gratitude, all of those things bring joy. And the fact that, again, we've gone back to when we talked about those, I forget what the phrase was, generations of work, but like what the focus of work was. It's no longer really about the providing or whatever that was.
Yeah.
There is this social construct to it now. And I think, going back to RTO policies and all these other things, none of that is about joy. Literally none of that.
Yeah, spot on. Right, I want to briefly talk about productivity before we go into the IC index for 2025. So I saw an article on IT Pro with the headline, "Always on culture is harming productivity, so workers are demanding digital silence to get on with tasks." Now, it was some research from a company called Twilio, which found that staff are pushing employers to allocate periods free from notifications and emails. The study was based on a survey in the UK of about 1,200 workers, and it found that nearly half are prioritising protected time in their daily workflow that's free from distractions, emails, and calls. Now, a key factor behind this pushback comes from all of the different messaging platforms and communication solutions that people have in their daily lives. In addition, 40% of respondents noted that notifications disrupt their ability to get work done, and this was highest among workers aged 51 to 55, And more than a third said they feel pressure to be constantly online and immediately respond to messages and emails during work hours. And this was most prevalent among workers aged 26 to 30. Now, this isn't necessarily new. Unily covered this in their digital noise impact report last year in 2024. So my question is, where does this responsibility sit? Do employers need to create this time, or is this for the role of the individual to know how they work and manage that accordingly? And what are internal comms professionals doing about this governance of digital channels? Before you answer that question, interestingly, I had a conversation with a client this week where I said I used to have my Fridays free and I'd work at home on a Friday. And she said those days are absolutely gone. Like they are in meetings back to back all the time. And I think it's that control and tussle of, is your time your own? Is my sort of final question and reflection of all the 7 questions I've asked you.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to your first 2, which is where is this who owns this responsibility, and do employers need to create this time in the role of the individual? And the answer to that is yes. It is both.
Okay.
When we've talked about personal boundaries in the past, if you don't communicate your boundaries, then it's not someone else's responsibility to know that. So you have to respect your own boundaries when it comes to that. You also have to build a culture where people do respect the boundaries of others. And going back to the story you were just beginning to share, in my last role, I blocked out my Fridays. But I put as my blocked out for recurring meetings. Like, message me if you need to meet. And so if people no one could book a recurring meeting on Friday. That's one of the biggest.
Wow.
I think
Okay. Nice.
we talk about this meeting culture thing. The fact that there are recurring meetings that just are on a calendar, whether you need them or not. Like, the fact that that's now a staple is probably very problematic. So then people could reach out to me and say, hey, do you have this 30 minutes? I can then make the judgment call on it. And then that's on me. They've followed the rules. It's on me to respect you. I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, I really need to get this done by Monday. Yes, absolutely, do it. Oh, you don't need this for another 2 weeks? No, we can meet Monday. That's fine.
Yeah.
It was more around protecting that time of just having that flexibility to do what I needed to do on that one day. I've heard of other companies say, like, we're going to have this summer is meeting free Friday, or 2 days a week, no meetings. Come on. That's like the whispering stuff. Like, hey, we're going to meet, but just don't put it on the calendar. Just put like something out. Like, no, it really is around boundaries and discipline and respect that you build in the culture. I don't know. Again, we talked about the role of internal comms people in governance, and are you now like the channel police and dictating how people use channels when they're going to use them, when what makes sense to them in that way? I don't have a lot of passion or emotion around that. I think the pressure to be constantly online, it's actually up to us to let go of that.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking about, there's this new, and I hope I'm getting this right, because I watch TikToks. I also find joy on TikTok. This like 3-2-1 thing where it's like, before 3 hours before bed, you will have eaten lunch or eaten your meal. So it's like, that's the discipline. It's setting yourself up for success. And I think sometimes we're so responsive that we're not, and reactive, that we're not actually setting ourselves up for success.
Yeah. And I completely agree. I think there is such a piece for the individual to have the conversations, like what you're saying. If you're invited to a meeting, or if somebody wants to solve something, let's talk about that. Like, I remember a HR director saying to me, I was the communications director, and she invited me to a meeting, and I was juggling all sorts of different things. And I said to her, why do you need me at that meeting? Like, kind of what's going on? And she said to me, I just love it when you're there. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to come. because I've got other things to do. But like, send me the recording or the minutes or whatever, and I'll catch up on stuff. But it was that conversation that sparked that whole shift for me in that organization of, I'm just going to check in with the outcome of the meeting or what my role is in there to make sure that I do need to be in it. And I don't think we do that enough, which is just our general noise. But I think it's how you discipline yourself with how you're using your status on Teams, how you're on Slack, whatever you're using, how you're making sure that that's appropriate for the work that you need to get done. And I think you have to control that.
I am pleasantly surprised, though, that it said that half of the people are prioritizing their protected times. That number,
Yeah.
I would have expected that to be a little bit lower. Also want to tell the people that are in that 51 to 55 range, which I will be in here within a year plus, you can turn notice off. Like, that's on you. You can turn those notifications off, just FYI. Talk to your IT team.
I love that. Right, let's wrap up with a closer look at the IC Index 2025, which is called IC Index 2025, a closer look. Now, we did have a sneak preview of having a look at this in order to record this in time for everyone, which is lovely. So thank you very much to the team at Ipsos Karian and Box for that. This is the latest report from them, and it's focusing on internal communication trends and employee preferences in the UK. It's a survey of around 5,000 UK workers, and it's identifying key insights that we'll run through around sort of email, pay and benefits, content channels. And it also explores demographics and generations and lots of different things in there. It's a fantastic report, but I've got 5 sort of key stats to throw at you, much in the same way you threw stats at me last week in this report. And then we can have a chat about it. So to kick us off, 74% of UK employees say that they get the right amount of communication from their employer. Receiving too much information has less negative impact than receiving too little. However, 20% of those who receive too much communication rate internal communications as poor, while this rises to 42% for those who receive too little. 53% of employees prefer to get written information about their employer's plans and priorities. 31% prefer to talk about it. And that's up 11 percentage points from 2023 in terms of that talking piece. The next stat is around channels. So 65% of employees say that email is the channel they most rely on for general news and updates. 19% of Gen Z employees rely on SMS or WhatsApp for updates. That's compared to 5% of baby boomers. 20% of baby boomers rely on the intranet. That is double the proportion of Gen Z employees. Interestingly, part-time employees are more likely to rely on word of mouth from colleagues compared to full-time employees. There's about a 6 percentage point difference between there. Linking to an earlier topic on this episode, diversity and inclusion tops the too much information list. 21% of employees say they receive too much information about diversity and inclusion, making it the topic with the largest proportion of employees feeling over-informed. On the other side of that, pay and benefits consistently remains the topic employees want more information about. This is the top topic for them. Around 36% of employees feel that they get too little information about that. Now, there's nothing significantly new in this data, but I have some thoughts. And so I'm just going to see whether anything really stands out for you.
Man, Jenni, I'm going to go back to my high-pitched rant here a bit. I feel so awful for those 21% of employees who feel over-informed on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like, I know too much. It's just, I don't understand it. Anyway, I wonder about the stat where it's like the 65% of employees say email is the channel they most rely on. I'm wondering, like, or is that the most reliable channel? Like, is that the one that everybody just uses, so therefore it's going to be there? So it's not necessarily, it's reliable. What this data points out to me, though, is apparently literally no one relies on the internet, which I think we should look at that. The fact that, the word of mouth, I actually thought the part-time employee part would have been a little bit higher than that, but it still shows how much word of mouth, like more people rely on word of mouth than the internet. Okay. That's something internal communicators should be paying attention to. So yeah, nothing too crazy here other than congratulations to the 21% of employees who are now overinformed on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Congratulations for that.
Do you know where I think that comes from? And I don't have any basis for this whatsoever. But I feel like when people say they receive too much information, I think it's where organizations have focused in on communicating about various different days and weeks that are specific for different groups. And I think that's where people feel like they get too much because one week it's this, one week it's that, and it feels too much, which isn't necessarily what you want them to know about in terms of diversity and inclusion. But I wonder if they feel like they're just bombarded with different weeks and months and days, and that feels like too much. Again, have no basis for that at all, other than anecdotal stuff I've heard from sort of clients and challenges.
I've seen how people you said people being bombarded by it. They're like dodging these things like flying out. I'm like, oh no, it's Nurses Week, it's Physicians Week, and they're trying to like stop.
What I do think is interesting though is the impact on how people perceive internal communications and the difference between that if you're receiving too much or too little. So just a reminder of that stat, it was that 20% of those who receive too much communication rate internal communications as poor, while that goes up to 42% of those who receive too little. Now, this is interesting for me in the conversations that I have a lot of the time around the fact that people feel like there's so much content going out, but actually, is that really the case? And the impact of too much versus too little is so different that it's just making me really think about the content strategies people are using internally. And if people, and they're not saying they get too little, but the impact of too little is so high. But I don't think I've heard any internal communicator say to me, oh, we hardly communicate anything. I definitely hear the whole other end of that. But there's obviously people that are getting too little and therefore it's having an impact. And I think that difference is just quite interesting to be mindful of when you're looking at your content strategy.
My problem, I guess, with this part, which I was kind of avoiding, and now you've brought it into the conversation.
Come on, come in.
Is that, let's say you and I each get 50 emails a day. The 50 you get are help you do your job. Like everyone is personalized, everyone is targeted what you get. And let's say 40 of the 50 I get really should have been for you. Well, the same amount of information went out, but I'm going to say it's too much.
Yeah.
Where you're going to say it's the exact amount. It's exactly what I need. So I think the people that are saying they get too much, it's probably not the much. You're probably getting too much irrelevant communication. Yeah. It's probably not targeted enough for them. It might be the same amount as someone else. It's not the amount that matters. It's the what, and it's the message and the personalization and the targeting of it that matters. So you could have two employees who sit side by side who get the exact same amount, and one saying it's too much and it's too little. This is why I've always wondered, like, letting employees sort of hit the throttle or open up of like, put them in control of the type of communication they get. Then they can't actually complain about too little, too much, because they're actually in control.
Yeah. And it is possible to do, because I did it. I used to have an intranet that you would subscribe to the right things that were relevant to you, and then you'd get your daily digest of that relevant news based on what you've subscribed to.
Well, we have that even inside the ecology community. Yeah. Me, obviously, running the community, I'm like, anything happens, notify me. Like, I want to know what's happening in there. I would imagine that other members might get a daily summary or even a weekly summary for that fact, because we have different needs. If they got the same thing that I did, it's going to be too much.
Yeah.
But it's not too much for me. If I got the weekly, it would be too little.
Yeah. But I think there's a correlation here that's worth exploring around this use of email. So I need to dig in more to this intranet stat, because that's really made me laugh. But the 65% of people saying email is the channel they use most, and how poor, I believe, email hygiene is in organizations in terms of that data and groups and how we're using that, then if that's your main channel, that's not going to be relevant and tailored in the way that it probably could be if we invested in it, if that's the channel people are in. So I think there's some stuff you could really dig in with this around how could you really workshop this with your team and talk it through and figure out how you could do things differently, because there's definitely threads to pull in here, I think. That's all our articles for this week. Now, what is freaking you out?
This is, I think in journalism is called a circle kicker.
Okay.
Where you like come back to something from the beginning and you bring it into the end, and it's back to getting old. We're recording this right before the weekend that'll happen, but I'm going to Dad's weekend at our daughter Bridget's sorority at Indiana University. So she's starting her sophomore year. She's killing it. She says sometimes she listens to the podcast, so I'm going to see if she actually does with this little shout out here. So she's killing it at IU. So proud of her. And I'm going to be hanging out with other dads of her sorority sisters for the weekend at Indiana University. It includes like tailgating and going to a football game. And
nice.
There's some activities at their house. Apparently we're going to fraternity parties, which I have not been at in probably exactly 28 years, Jenni, that I've been to a fraternity party, but I'm here for it. And it's just, it's a really cool experience. Like if you're watching, you see me smiling, talking about it, like to be able to spend that time with our daughter, one-on-one with her sorority sisters in that context of Dad's weekend. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, that does sound very cool. I'm very excited to see pictures or hear about it afterwards. Because it does sound very
I'm
cool.
sure there will be several meals purchased and shopping trips and some other things looped in. I'm also here for all that too. So I know how the game works.
So my freak out this week is the book Invisible Women, which I've just started to read. It's a book that came out, I think, before 2020, which is where we all seem to mark time now. But it's a really interesting book. It's been on my list to read for a very long time, and it's all about data that exists in the world that has been predominantly brought together by research on men. So there's some really interesting stuff in it. And I need to be careful how much I read it because it's making me a bit angry in certain points. But it's really interesting to learn about the lack of female data that informs things that we probably think about all the time. And I'm just going to do one example from the book because I thought it was really interesting around how we deal with snow. And I think it was in Sweden or somewhere like that, when they had snow, their priority was to clear the roads to make sure that people could get to work. But that was based on data of men, because they are the main ones driving the cars and getting to work. Whereas women are more likely to be on public transport or going by foot. But they didn't get to doing the pavements and the stuff that would make that easier for them because they were prioritizing the roads. When they changed that, the impact on the economy was huge because it ended up saving them loads of money on things like trips and falls in the ice and the snow because less people were being injured because they'd managed to change it. And it's just all these little data gaps that design society that are just, it's very, very interesting. Don't read it if you don't want to get a little bit angry because there is that. But I'm finding it very interesting. So it's freaking me out a little bit, but it's a good read. It's a good read.
I think we should all consume content and read things that get us angry. I do. And I was thinking as you were sharing that story where it's like, oh, it's because of this. And like, no. We do it this way. It's actually like, this is what happens. The Freakonomics podcast is classic at this. And they found this old study. And I love that they always bring the economic lens to it. And they had talked about like the rise in crime, like crime increases, blah, blah, blah. Why is it doing it? And I was like, well, we need to spend more on police. We need more prisons. We need to do all these things. That's going to battle crime. And what they found, the true driver economically of increased crime was unwanted pregnancies.
Wow.
That was it. That was the driver. That was the change. That was when, we're going to clear the sidewalks instead of the roads. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Now this is really the unlock. So yeah, I'm now intrigued. I want to read this because I want to
think
get
you'd love
angry.
it. Yeah,
You made me angry earlier today, Jenny. I'm going to keep riding my anger wave.
I did.
And keep
and
going.
I'm sorry about that. But you should. But Invisible Women is good. I'm enjoying it. I am enjoying it, even though it is making me a bit angry. But it does make you see some of that inequality in the world. So that's why I've wanted to read it.
Because I think that's one of those things. There's a Dr. Lino Caramancheri, who I joke rents a space in my head, who speaks a lot on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like once you see things, you can't unsee them.
Yes.
And I think these are those things like you've got to make it to where people finally see it, because you can't unsee it after that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's it this week. Thank you for joining us. All of the articles that have inspired this conversation are in the show notes. And don't forget to rate and review. I'll say it again. Don't forget to rate and review after you've listened. Subscribe so that you don't miss another episode, and pass this along to someone that you think would enjoy listening or watching, because we're also on YouTube. Thank you to Poet Ali for contributing the music to the show, and we'll be back next week with more news, insights and opinions about everything comms and leadership in workplaces today. Keep tuning in and turning up.